The Mercedes key hit Marcus Cole's chest before he even saw her face. "Pick it up," the woman in the wheelchair commanded, her voice cutting through the garage like a blade. "And try not to get your filthy oil on it." Marcus looked down at the key lying in the dirt, then up at the woman whose eyes held nothing but contempt. He was a single father, a struggling mechanic, a man who'd buried his wife 3 years ago and raised his daughter alone. But what Victoria Sterling didn't know, what would freeze the smile on her perfect face, was that Marcus was about to discover she was dying, and he was the only one who could save her. Comment which city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The key landed at Marcus Cole's feet with a small metallic clink that somehow echoed through the entire shop. For a moment, nobody moved. Tommy, Marcus's oldest employee, stopped mid-wrench. Young Derek froze with a spark plug in his hand. Even the radio seemed to pause between songs, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Marcus looked down at the Mercedes key fob lying in the oil-stained dirt of his garage floor. Then he looked up at the woman who'd thrown it. She sat in her wheelchair like it was a throne made of ice. Designer suit that cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. Hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Everything about her screamed money and power and absolute certainty that people like Marcus existed only to serve people like her. "I said pick it up." Her voice was colder the second time. "Are you deaf or just slow?" Marcus had been running Cole's auto repair for 15 years. He'd dealt with difficult customers before. Angry husbands, stressed mothers, teenagers who thought their daddy's money made them untouchable. But something about this woman was different. Something about the way she looked at him, looked through him, like he wasn't even human. "Ma'am," Marcus said slowly, his voice steady. "I'll be happy to help you, but I'd appreciate if you'd hand me the key like a person, instead of throwing it at me like I'm a dog." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Tommy made a small choking sound behind him. Marcus could feel his employee's shock radiating through the garage. Nobody talked back to customers. Not in this economy. Not when they were 3 months behind on rent and 1 bad review away from closing forever. But Marcus Cole had buried his wife. He'd held his daughter's broken body in his arms and begged God for a miracle. He'd learned the hard way that dignity wasn't something you could afford to sell, no matter how desperate you got. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The woman's voice rose sharp and dangerous. "No, ma'am, and I don't particularly care. I fix cars. If you want your car fixed, pick up that key, hand it to me properly, and we can do business. Otherwise, the door's right behind you." The silence in the garage was absolute. The woman stared at Marcus for a long moment. Her jaw tightened. Her hands gripped the armrests of her wheelchair so hard her knuckles turned white. Then incredibly she laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that had broken people, ended careers, destroyed companies. The laugh of someone who'd learned to use cruelty as a weapon because it was the only thing that made her feel powerful anymore. Victoria Sterling. She said the name dropping like a bomb. "Sterling Corporate Solutions. I've dismantled companies bigger than your entire block. I've fired CEOs who thought they were untouchable. And you're standing there in your greasy little garage telling me to pick up my own key." "Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what I'm telling you." Victoria Sterling leaned forward in her wheelchair, her eyes blazing with something that might have been anger, or might have been respect, or might have been both twisted together so tight, even she couldn't tell them apart. "You know what I like you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You've got spine. Most people see the chair and start falling over themselves to accommodate me. Poor crippled woman, let's make her comfortable. But you don't give a damn about my chair. Your chair's got nothing to do with basic human decency, ma'am." "Victoria." She rolled forward, reaching down to pick up the key herself. It clearly cost her something. Marcus could see the effort it took, the way her body strained against its limitations, but she did it. "If you're going to be rude to me, at least use my first name." She held out the key. Marcus took it. "Now," Victoria said, her voice back to business, My car is making a noise that shouldn't exist in a vehicle that costs more than your shop. Fix it." Marcus walked toward the Mercedes. It was the most beautiful car he'd ever seen up close. Sleek, powerful, engineered with a precision that made his mechanic's heart ache with appreciation. "What kind of noise?" he asked. "A high-pitched whine. Started 3 days ago. My regular mechanic is in Seattle and apparently incapable of flying to Baltimore when I need him." Marcus popped the hood. The engine was immaculate, maintained with the kind of obsessive care that only money could buy. He started it up, listened, and heard exactly what Victoria was describing. Serpentine belt wearing down. 20 minutes of work, maybe 30 if he took his time. But then Marcus crouched down by the rear wheel, and everything changed. He'd been a mechanic for 23 years. He'd learned from his father, who'd learned from his father, a lineage of men who understood machines the way poets understood words. And in 23 years, Marcus had developed an instinct, a sixth sense, for when something was wrong. Really wrong. The brake lines were corroded, not just worn, not just aging. Corroded through in 2 places, the metal so thin it was practically transparent. One hard stop, one deer jumping into the road, one kid chasing a ball into traffic. One moment of emergency braking and those lines would snap like wet paper. At highway speeds in a car this heavy with a driver who couldn't use her legs to brace for impact. Marcus stood up slowly, his heart pounding. He looked at Victoria Sterling, this woman who'd thrown a key at his chest, who'd looked at him like he was dirt on her expensive shoes, who'd made it crystal clear that she considered him and his shop and everything he'd built to be beneath her notice. And he realized he was about to save her life. "Ms. Sterling." He walked back toward her, wiping his hands on his rag. "Victoria, the serpentine belt is your noise. Easy fix. But I found something else and you need to hear this." Victoria was already scrolling through her phone, dismissing him with her posture. "I don't pay for problems I didn't ask about. Fix the belt, send me the bill. I have a board meeting in 2 hours. Your brake lines are about to fail." That got her attention. Her head snapped up, her eyes sharp. "What? Both rear brake lines are corroded through. You've got maybe days before they snap completely, maybe hours, and when they go, oh, please." Victoria's laugh was harsh, bitter. "Here we go, the classic mechanic scam. Find the rich woman, invent an expensive problem, pocket the difference. What's next? You're going to tell me my transmission is failing. My engine block is cracked. Ma'am, this isn't—" "Save it." Victoria held up her hand. "Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think because I'm in this chair I can't recognize a con when I hear one? My regular mechanic inspects this car every 3 months. He would have caught any real problem. But you see a wealthy woman, a disabled woman, and you think, easy target." Marcus felt the familiar burn of being judged. It happened all the time in his line of work. People saw the grease under his fingernails, the worn clothes, the struggling neighborhood, and made assumptions about his intelligence, his honesty, his worth. But something about Victoria's accusations, the casual way she dismissed him as a liar, a thief, a predator, something about that cut deeper than usual. "Tommy," Marcus called out, not taking his eyes off Victoria. "Bring me my phone." Tommy handed it over without a word. Marcus switched to camera mode and walked back to the Mercedes. "Come here." "Excuse me." "I said come here. You want to call me a liar? Fine. Look at your own car and tell me I'm lying." Victoria hesitated. Marcus could see the calculation in her eyes, the pride warring with something else. Curiosity, maybe, or the tiniest flicker of doubt. She rolled her wheelchair forward. Marcus crouched down, angling his phone camera to capture the brake lines in sharp detail. "See this?" He zoomed in on the corroded metal, the parts so thin they were nearly invisible. "That's your rear brake line. And this," he shifted the angle, "is where it's about to snap." Victoria leaned down from her chair, squinting at the screen. Her face went pale. "That's impossible," she whispered. "My mechanic, he checks everything. He would have—" "When was the last inspection?" 6 months ago." "Has the car been sitting, not driven regularly?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. I've been traveling less, working from home more. Moisture accelerates corrosion. If the car's been sitting in a garage, especially in this humidity. Marcus stood up, meeting her eyes. This didn't happen overnight. It's been building, and I'm guessing your mechanic either missed it or didn't look hard enough. Victoria stared at the phone screen for a long moment. Her hands were shaking slightly, gripping her wheelchair's armrests with white-knuckled intensity. How much? She asked. Finally, her voice stripped of its earlier cruelty. To fix everything. Serpentine belt is $60 in parts 1 hour labor. Brake lines are more serious. I need to replace both rear lines, flush the entire system, test everything twice. Total cost around $800. Time minimum 3 hours, maybe 4. 4 hours. The sharp edge crept back into Victoria's voice. That's impossible. I have a board meeting. I have clients waiting. I can't sit in this place for 4 hours. Then reschedule. I can't reschedule. Do you have any idea what's at stake? There are jobs on the line. Decisions that need to be made. I can't just... Then don't. Marcus's voice was calm, steady. Drive out of here right now. Take your chances. Maybe the lines hold. Maybe they don't. Maybe you make it to your meeting and back home safely. Or maybe you're doing 60 on the interstate when a truck cuts you off and you hit the brakes and nothing happens. Victoria's face drained of color. Your choice, Marcus continued. But I'm not letting you drive out of here without knowing exactly what you're risking. That's not a mechanic scam. That's me doing my job. The silence stretched between them. Derek had stopped working entirely, watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Tommy stood frozen by the tool bench, a wrench forgotten in his hand. Even the garage seemed to be holding its breath. Fine, Victoria said finally. Her voice was tight, controlled, but Marcus could hear the fear underneath. Fix it. Fix everything. But I'm watching every single thing you do. If you try to add any unnecessary work, if you try to inflate the bill by 1 penny, you'll what? Marcus asked. Leave a bad review. Report me to the Better Business Bureau lady. You've already made it clear what you think of me and this place. I'm not doing this for your approval. I'm doing it because it's my job to make sure you don't die on the highway. He turned and walked back to the Mercedes, not waiting for her response. For the next hour, Marcus worked in silence while Victoria watched from her wheelchair, positioned where she could see every move he made. Her eyes tracked his hands with suspicious intensity, looking for any sign of dishonesty, any hint of the scam she was convinced he was running. Marcus explained each step as he went, partly professional courtesy, partly because he sensed Victoria was someone who needed to understand, to maintain some illusion of control over a life that had spiraled beyond her grasp. Serpentine belt connects everything, he said, removing the old one. Alternator power, steering, air conditioning. This one's worn down to almost nothing. See these cracks another week and it would have snapped completely. I know what a serpentine belt does, Victoria said sharply. I'm not mechanically ignorant. Never said you were. The silence returned heavier than before. Marcus moved to the brake lines, and the complexity of the repair demanded his full attention. He had to be careful. One wrong move with corroded lines could cause bigger problems than he was trying to fix. It was during one of the quiet moments waiting for brake fluid to drain that Victoria spoke again. My father owned a shop like this. Marcus looked up, surprised. 3 of them, actually. Victoria's voice was distant, almost soft. Before everything changed. Before the big chains moved in and drove independent mechanics out of business. Before people like me... She stopped abruptly, as if she'd said too much. What happened to them? Victoria's jaw tightened. He lost everything. Died broken, wondering where he'd gone wrong. Wondering why working hard and being honest wasn't enough anymore. Marcus set down his tools. Is that why you went into corporate restructuring? Dismantling companies because of what happened to your father? Don't. Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. Don't pretend you understand me. Don't try to psychoanalyze me like I'm one of your broken engines you can figure out and fix. Wasn't trying to fix you, just asking. Well, don't. Marcus went back to work. Another hour passed. Victoria's phone rang multiple times. She answered each call with the same crisp, commanding tone, rescheduling meetings, delegating decisions, maintaining the illusion of control even from a wheelchair in a garage. She clearly considered beneath her. But Marcus noticed something during those calls. Victoria's voice changed when she spoke to her employees. It became harder, colder, stripped of any warmth. She talked about people like they were numbers on a spreadsheet, resources to be allocated, expenses to be cut, problems to be solved. And underneath all that corporate coldness, Marcus heard something else. Exhaustion. A bone-deep weariness that had nothing to do with the wheelchair or the disability. Victoria Sterling was tired. Not physically tired, tired of her own life, tired of the person she'd become. The third hour of work was almost complete when Marcus's daughter walked through the garage door. Lily Cole was 10 years old with her mother's smile and her father's stubbornness. She'd come straight from school, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her face bright with the uncomplicated joy of childhood. "Dad!" She ran toward Marcus, then stopped short when she saw Victoria in her wheelchair. "Oh, hi, I'm Lily." Victoria stared at the girl like she was looking at a ghost. "Lily, honey, I'm working," Marcus said gently. "Go do your homework in the office. I'll be done soon." "Okay." Lily started toward the back office, then paused, turning back to Victoria. "I like your chair. Is it electric? My friend Danny has one, but his doesn't look as fancy." Victoria's mouth opened-closed. For the first time since she'd rolled into the garage, she seemed genuinely at a loss for words. Yes, electric, custom-made." "Cool." Lily smiled a real smile without judgment or pity, or any of the complicated emotions adults carry. "See you later." She disappeared into the back office, leaving a strange silence in her wake. Marcus noticed Victoria's hands were shaking again. But this time it wasn't fear or anger. "How old?" Victoria asked quietly. 10. "Does she live with you full-time?" "Just me and her. Her mom passed 3 years ago. Cancer." Victoria closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. "I have a daughter," she said. "Claire, 17. She barely speaks to me anymore." Marcus didn't respond. He'd learned long ago that some silences needed to be filled by the person carrying the weight, not by well-meaning observers. "She used to visit every weekend." Victoria continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "After my accident 2 years ago, car crash drunk driver, she was there every single day. Brought me flowers, held my hand, told me everything was going to be okay." "What changed?" Victoria laughed, but it was a broken sound. "I changed. I got angry, so angry I couldn't see straight. Angry at the driver who hit me. Angry at God for letting it happen. Angry at my own body for betraying me. And I took all that anger and I pointed it at everyone around me, including my daughter, until she couldn't stand to be in the same room with me anymore." She looked down at her motionless legs. "Last month was her birthday. She didn't want to celebrate with me. Said she missed having a mother. Said sitting in a room with me just reminded her of everything she'd lost." Marcus set down his tools and walked over to Victoria. He crouched down so they were eye level, looking at her the same way he'd look at anyone, not with pity, not with judgment, just recognition of one human being by another. "Can I show you something?" Victoria frowned. "What?" Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo. A little girl in a hospital bed, both legs in casts, her face twisted in agony. "This is Lily. 3 years ago, 6 months after her mom died." Victoria's breath caught. "Drunk driver ran a red light. Hit our car broadside. My wife was killed instantly. Lily's legs were shattered, 8 breaks total. Doctors said she'd probably never walk normally again. Said she'd need braces, crutches, maybe a wheelchair for the rest of her life." He swiped to another photo. Lily gripping parallel bars, tears streaming down her face, determination blazing in her young eyes. "Physical therapy was brutal. She cried every single session, begged me to let her stop. There were nights she screamed that she hated me for making her try, and I almost gave in. Almost let her quit because I couldn't stand watching her suffer. Another photo. Lily taking her first steps without support, her face a mixture of terror and triumph. But her doctor, James Chen, he told me something I'll never forget. He said the body wants to heal. It's designed to heal. But healing requires two things: the right treatment and the courage to endure the pain that comes with recovery. The final photo. Lily from last week running across a soccer field, her legs strong and whole, her smile radiant with joy. She doesn't just walk now, Marcus said. She runs, she plays soccer, she climbs trees and scares me half to death. And none of that would have happened if I'd let her choose comfort over courage. Victoria was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face in a way that suggested she hadn't cried in a very long time. "Why are you showing me this?" she whispered. Marcus stood up, meeting her eyes. "Because I saw something earlier. When you picked up that key, it was hard for you, but you did it. And I thought that's someone who used to fight, someone who used to push through walls, someone who's forgotten who she was." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of metal that had fallen from Victoria's purse when she'd transferred to her wheelchair earlier, a medical alert bracelet. Victoria's face went white. "Incomplete spinal cord injury," Marcus read quietly. C6, C7. Incomplete. That means there's still nerve function, still potential for recovery. "Give that back." Victoria's voice was barely audible. "Have you been doing physical therapy? Because if your injury is incomplete, there are treatments." "Stop!" Victoria's hands clenched into fists. "Stop right there. You don't know anything. You're a mechanic. You fix cars, not people." "I fix broken things," Marcus said simply. "That's what I do. I find what's damaged, figure out what needs repair, and I don't stop working until it's fixed. Cars, engines, brake lines, they're all just problems waiting for someone willing to put in the effort." He knelt down in front of Victoria's wheelchair, looking directly into her eyes. "And Victoria Sterling, you're not as broken as you think you are." Victoria shook her head violently. "You don't understand. The doctors said I might walk again, might with intensive therapy. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't handle the hope." "Do you understand? Hope is worse than despair. Hope means trying and possibly failing. Hope means believing in something and watching it die. So you chose anger instead." "Yes." The word came out like a sob. "I chose anger because it was easier. I chose cruelty because it was safer. I spent 2 years pushing away everyone who tried to help me because being alone hurt less than risking another failure." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke words that would change everything. Dr. Chen, the doctor who helped Lily walk again, moved his practice to Baltimore 6 months ago. He specializes in incomplete spinal cord injuries. He's 15 minutes from here. Victoria stared at him. "I'm going to give you his number," Marcus continued. "And I'm going to make you a promise. If you're willing to try, really try, I believe you can walk again." "That's impossible." Victoria's laugh was harsh, broken. "You're a mechanic in a struggling garage. You can't promise me anything." "Maybe not." Marcus smiled, and it was the first time Victoria had seen warmth in his face. "But I can promise you this. I've never given up on anything broken. Not my daughter, not my shop, not my life after my wife died. And I'm not going to give up on you either." He stood up, pulling out his phone. "I'm sending you Dr. Chen's contact information right now. Tell him Marcus Cole referred you. He'll take care of you." Victoria's phone buzzed with the incoming message. She stared at the screen like it was a live grenade. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why do you care? I've been nothing but cruel to you. I threw a key at your chest. I called you a scammer. I've insulted you in a dozen different ways. So why do you care if I ever walk again?" Marcus thought about Lily's first steps, about his wife's last breath, about 15 years of building something from nothing and refusing to let the world break him. "Because everyone deserves someone who believes in them," he said. even when they've forgotten how to believe in themselves. The brake line repair was finished 20 minutes later. Marcus tested everything 3 times, refusing to rush, making absolutely certain Victoria's car was safe. When he finally handed her the keys, placed them in her palm instead of throwing them, Victoria sat motionless for a long moment. $800, she said quietly. That's what you quoted. That's right. Victoria pulled out her checkbook and wrote a number. When she handed it to Marcus, his eyes went wide. This is 10 times what I charged. Consider the extra a down payment, Victoria said. For the foundation. What foundation? Victoria looked out the garage door at the street beyond the struggling neighborhood, the closed businesses, the American dream slowly dying on every corner. The one we're going to build together, she said. For people who need second chances, people who need someone to believe in them. She paused. If I walk again when I walk again, I'm going to use everything I have to help people like you, help people like me. Marcus didn't know what to say. Victoria started her car tested. The brakes felt the smooth response of properly functioning systems. Before she closed the door, she looked at Marcus one final time. I'm going to call your Dr. Chen, she said. Tonight. And Marcus, thank you for seeing something in me I couldn't see in myself. She drove away, leaving Marcus standing in his garage holding a check that could save his business and a hope that could save something far more valuable. 3 blocks away, Victoria Sterling pulled over to the side of the road. She sat in her car, hands shaking, staring at Dr. Chen's contact information on her phone. For 2 years, she'd built walls around her heart so high that nothing could get through. For 2 years, she'd convinced herself that hope was dangerous, that trying was foolish, that accepting her broken life was the only logical choice. But sitting there in her newly repaired car, saved by a mechanic she'd treated like dirt, Victoria felt something she thought had died inside her. A spark, small, fragile, terrifying, but undeniably alive. She thought about Claire, about the daughter she'd driven away with her bitterness and rage, about the mother she'd been before the accident, before anger consumed everything good inside her. She thought about Marcus Cole's absolute conviction when he'd said, "I believe you can walk again." Victoria took a deep breath and pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a warm voice answered. "Dr. Chen's office. This is Rebecca. How can I help you?" Victoria's voice trembled as she spoke the hardest words she'd said in 2 years. "My name is Victoria Sterling. I was referred by Marcus Cole, and I think I need help." The phone call lasted only 3 minutes, but it changed everything. Rebecca, Dr. Chen's receptionist, had a voice like warm honey, patient kind, completely non-judgmental. She didn't ask why Victoria had waited 2 years. She didn't ask about the accident, or the wheelchair, or the anger that had consumed Victoria's life. She simply said, "Dr. Chen has an opening tomorrow at 10. Would that work for you? Tomorrow, 10 o'clock, 14 hours away." Victoria had agreed before she could talk herself out of it, then hung up, and sat in her parked car for another 20 minutes, shaking so hard she couldn't drive. What had she done? She'd spent 2 years building walls. 2 years convincing herself that hope was poison, that trying was foolish, that the woman she'd been before the accident was dead and buried and never coming back. And now, because some mechanic in a struggling garage had refused to let her drive away in a death trap, she'd made an appointment that could destroy everything she'd built. Because if she tried and failed, if she went through months of brutal therapy, only to end up exactly where she started, Victoria didn't think she could survive it. But Marcus Cole's voice kept echoing in her head. Everyone deserves someone who believes in them, even when they've forgotten how to believe in themselves. Victoria drove home slowly, carefully, her newly repaired brakes responding perfectly to every touch. The Mercedes handled like a dream, smooth and precise, exactly what you'd expect from a car that cost more than most people's houses. But Victoria barely noticed. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. 14 hours in the future, sitting in a rehabilitation center, facing the possibility that everything she'd told herself for 2 years might be wrong. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. She lay in her expensive bed in her expensive apartment, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario in her head. Dr. Chen would examine her and confirm what she already knew, that she was broken beyond repair, that the wheelchair was her permanent home. That hope was exactly the poison she'd always believed it to be. Or worse. Dr. Chen would examine her and tell her there was a chance. A real chance. And then she'd have to decide whether to take it. At 2 a.m., Victoria gave up on sleep and wheeled herself to the window. The Baltimore skyline glittered in the darkness, beautiful and cold, full of people living lives she could barely remember. People who could walk, who could run, who could dance with their daughters at weddings and chase their grandchildren through parks. People who hadn't lost everything in a single moment of twisted metal and shattering glass. Victoria's phone sat on the table beside her. Before she could stop herself, she picked it up and scrolled to Claire's contact. Her daughter's photo stared back at her, a selfie from 2 years ago, before the accident, when Claire still smiled at her mother like she was the center of the universe. Victoria's thumb hovered over the call button. It was 2 a.m. Claire would be asleep. Calling now would be selfish, would be intrusive, would be exactly the kind of boundary-violating behavior that had driven her daughter away in the first place. Victoria called anyway. The phone rang 4 times. 5. Victoria was about to hang up when Claire's voice came through, groggy and confused. "Mom, what's wrong? It's 2 in the morning." "I know." Victoria's voice cracked. "I know, and I'm sorry. I needed to hear your voice." Silence on the other end. Victoria could almost hear Claire's defenses going up the walls she'd built to protect herself from her mother's toxicity. "Are you okay?" Claire asked carefully. "Did something happen?" "I met someone today." Victoria laughed, and it came out wet and broken. "A mechanic. My car broke down in this terrible neighborhood, and I had to take it to this struggling little garage, and there was this man, this single father with grease on his hands and holes in his boots, and I was awful to him, Claire. I was so awful." "Mom." "I threw my keys at him like he was a dog. I called him a scammer when he tried to save my life. I looked at him like he was nothing, like he was dirt, like he wasn't even human. And do you know what he did?" Claire was quiet, waiting. "He fixed my car anyway. He found a problem that could have killed me. My brake lines were about to fail, and he fixed it even though I'd been terrible to him. And then he looked me in the eyes and told me he believed I could walk again." Victoria heard Claire's sharp intake of breath. "He has a daughter." Victoria continued, tears streaming down her face. 10 years old. She was in an accident 3 years ago. Doctors said she'd never walk normally again, but he didn't give up on her. He found the right doctor, pushed her through therapy, refused to let her quit even when she begged him to stop. And now she runs Claire. She plays soccer. She's whole again because her father believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. "Mom." Claire's voice was thick with emotion. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I have an appointment tomorrow, with the same doctor who helped his daughter." "I'm saying—" Victoria stopped struggling to get the words out. "I'm saying I want to try. I want to fight. I want to be the mother you used to know, not this bitter, broken woman I've become." The silence stretched so long that Victoria thought Claire had hung up. Then she heard it. A sob. Her daughter was crying. "I've been waiting," Claire whispered. "For 2 years, Mom. I've been waiting for you to say something like this. I've been praying for you to come back to me." "I'm so sorry." Victoria was crying too now, ugly crying, the kind she hadn't allowed herself since the accident. "I'm so sorry for everything. For pushing you away. For being cruel. For making you feel like you'd lost your mother when I was right here the whole time. It's okay. It's not okay. None of this is okay. But I want to make it better. I want to try. Will you—" Victoria's voice broke completely. "Will you help me?" "Yes," Claire's answer came immediately fierce and certain. God, yes, Mom, I'll help you. Whatever you need, I'll be there. They talked until the sun came up. Really talked for the first time in 2 years. About Claire's life her senior year, her college applications, the boys she'd been dating for 3 months, and hadn't told her mother about because she couldn't bear another conversation filled with criticism and disappointment. About Victoria's life, the accident, the anger, the way she'd let bitterness consume everything good inside her until there was nothing left but sharp edges and cold fury. About the future, uncertain, terrifying, but somehow possible, in a way it hadn't been 24 hours ago. When they finally hung up, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in 783 days. Hope. Small and fragile and absolutely terrifying, but alive. The rehabilitation center didn't look like Victoria expected. She'd prepared herself for sterile white walls, harsh fluorescent lighting, the antiseptic smell of medical facilities that had become her personal hell over the past 2 years. Instead, she found warm colors, natural light streaming through large windows, and equipment that looked more like a high-end gym than a hospital. Mrs. Sterling. A nurse appeared in the doorway, her smile genuine and warm. Dr. Chen is ready for you. Victoria's hands tightened on her wheelchair's armrests. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around to wheel herself out of this building and never come back to retreat to the safety of her anger and her walls and her carefully constructed hopelessness. But Marcus Cole's voice echoed in her head. I fix broken things. That's what I do. Victoria rolled forward. Dr. James Chen was not what she expected either. He was in his 50s, with kind eyes and surprisingly muscular forearms, wearing casual clothes instead of a white coat. When he shook her hand, his grip was firm, but gentle. Mrs. Sterling, he said, his voice carrying a trace of an accent she couldn't place. Marcus Cole speaks very highly of you. Victoria's eyebrows rose. Does he? That's generous considering I was unspeakably rude to him. He mentioned that too. Dr. Chen smiled. He also said you apologized, which apparently made quite an impression. Marcus doesn't refer patients to me lightly. He only sends people he believes are ready to fight. I don't know if I'm ready to fight, Victoria admitted. I'm here because I made a promise I'm already regretting. Honesty. Dr. Chen nodded appreciatively. Good. We'll need a lot of that. May I examine you? The examination was unlike anything Victoria had experienced in 2 years of medical appointments. Dr. Chen didn't just check her reflexes and range of motion. He asked questions, dozens of them, about her accident, yes, but also about her life before. Her work, her daughter, her dreams. You used to run marathons, Dr. Chen observed, reading through her medical history. Boston, New York, Chicago. Impressive. Used to. Victoria emphasized the past tense bitterly. Dead dreams. Are they? Dr. Chen's eyes met hers. Or are they just dreams that require a different path? Victoria laughed harshly. I can't feel my legs, Dr. Chen. I think the marathon dreams are definitively dead. Dr. Chen set down the file and pulled up a chair directly across from Victoria, sitting so they were at eye level. Tell me something, he said. When you ran those marathons, did you ever hit a wall? A point where your body screamed at you to stop, where every muscle burned and your mind told you it was impossible to continue. Of course, every marathon has a wall. And what did you do when you hit it? Victoria was quiet for a moment, remembering. I kept running, because stopping meant failing, and I don't fail. You don't fail, Dr. Chen repeated softly. Except you've been failing for 2 years now, haven't you? Failing to try, failing to hope, failing to fight for yourself the way you fought through those marathons. The words hit like a physical blow. You don't understand, Victoria whispered. Running through pain when you know you'll finish is different from fighting when you might fail, when you probably will fail. You're right, Doctor, Chen agreed. It is different. It's harder. It requires more courage, not less. He pulled up images on his computer scans of Victoria's spine, detailed and color-coded. He pointed to specific areas, explaining in terms she could understand. Your spinal cord injury is at C6-C7, incomplete classification. You have preserved sensation in some areas, which means neural pathways are still intact. Your muscles haven't atrophied significantly, which tells me your body is still trying to send signals, even if your brain isn't receiving them properly. He pulled up another image. This is remarkable, actually. Most patients with incomplete injuries who don't pursue immediate therapy show significant degradation within the first year. But you, he gestured at the screen, you're maintaining. Almost like your body is waiting for you to decide to use it again. What are you saying? Victoria's voice shook. I'm saying that with intensive therapy, and I mean intensive, Victoria, not casual physical therapy twice a week, there's a realistic chance you could regain significant function. Walking might be possible, not guaranteed, but possible. The word hung in the air like a dangerous promise. How much chance? Victoria asked. Give me a percentage. I need data, not hope. Dr. Chen considered carefully. Based on your specific injury pattern, your overall health, and your physical condition pre-injury, I'd estimate a 60 to 70% chance of regaining the ability to walk with assistance. Maybe 40% chance of walking independently. 10% chance of full recovery. Numbers. Data. Something Victoria could process without emotions clouding her judgment. That means there's a 30 to 40% chance I'll go through months of brutal therapy and end up exactly where I am now, she said. In this chair. Broken. Yes? Dr. Chen agreed. That's the risk. But Victoria, there's a 100% chance that if you don't try, you'll stay exactly where you are. The question isn't whether you might fail. The question is whether you can live with yourself if you don't try. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 2 years pressing down on her chest. I have a daughter, she said suddenly. Claire? She's 17. Smart, beautiful, everything I could have hoped for. She opened her eyes and they were wet. And she barely speaks to me anymore. She visits once a month out of obligation, stays for an hour, and leaves. Do you know what I see in her eyes when she looks at me? Pity. And disappointment. Not because I'm in a wheelchair. Claire would never judge me for that, but because I've become someone she doesn't recognize. Someone bitter and cruel, and so consumed by anger that there's nothing left of the mother she used to know. So change, Dr. Chen said simply. Become someone she can recognize again. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Not easy, simple and easy are very different things. You've spent 2 years choosing bitterness because it was easier than choosing hope. Now choose differently. Victoria shook her head, overwhelmed. I don't know if I can. Then let me ask you something else, Dr. Chen said. If Claire came to you right now and said she wanted to try something difficult, something scary, something she might fail at, what would you tell her? The answer came immediately. I'd tell her to try anyway. That failure is temporary, but regret is permanent. That she's stronger than she knows. And yet you won't give yourself the same advice. Victoria had no response to that. Dr. Chen stood walking to the window. I'm going to be honest with you, Victoria. I don't take every patient who comes through that door. Rehabilitation from spinal cord injury requires total commitment from both therapist and patient. If you're not ready to fight, I can't help you. So you're rejecting me? Victoria felt a flash of her old anger. No. Doctor. Chen turned back to face her. I'm asking you to make a choice. Not today. Not right now. But soon. Because if you commit to this, I'm committing everything I have to helping you. But I won't waste my time or yours if you're just going through the motions to satisfy a promise you made to a mechanic. He pulled out a business card and handed it to Victoria. This is my personal number. When you've decided, really decided, call me. We'll start immediately. Victoria took the card with shaking hands. And if I decide I can't do it, then you go back to your life exactly as it is, Dr. Chen said gently. And in 10 years, when Claire has children of her own, you can explain to your grandchildren why you chose to stay in that chair when you had a chance to fight for something better. The words were harsh but necessary. Victoria felt them cut through every excuse she'd built over 2 years. Dr. Chen walked her to the door, his hand briefly touching her shoulder. "Marcus Cole told me something interesting when he called to refer you," he said. "He said you were the strongest person he'd met in years, even if you'd forgotten it yourself. I think he's right." Victoria drove home in a daze. Dr. Chen's card sat on the passenger seat like a live grenade. 60 to 70% chance. Not guaranteed, not certain, but possible. When she got back to her apartment, Victoria didn't go inside immediately. Instead, she sat in her car, staring at nothing, running through everything Dr. Chen had said. "You've been failing for 2 years. Failing to try. Failing to hope. Failing to fight." Was that true? Had she really spent 2 years failing? Victoria thought about the woman she'd been before the accident, the marathon runner who'd never quit, the corporate executive who'd built an empire through sheer force of will, the mother who'd promised Claire the world and meant every word. That woman felt like a stranger now, a ghost from a life that belonged to someone else. But sitting in her car, holding Dr. Chen's business card, Victoria realized something that made her chest ache. That woman wasn't dead, she was just hiding. Buried under 2 years of grief and anger and fear, waiting for permission to come back. Victoria pulled out her phone and called Marcus Cole. He answered on the second ring. "Victoria." "I went to Dr. Chen," she said without preamble. "He examined me. He says there's a 60 to 70% chance I could walk again with intensive therapy." Silence on the other end. 60 to 70%. Marcus repeated slowly. "That's incredible." "That's terrifying," Victoria corrected. "That means there's a 30 to 40% chance I'll fail, that I'll go through months of brutal therapy and end up exactly where I started." "So you might fail. And Victoria's voice rose. "And that's the whole problem. I can't. I don't know how to fail, Marcus. I've never failed at anything in my life. I built a corporate empire from nothing. I ran marathons that people said were impossible. I've always been the person who wins, who succeeds, who pushes through every obstacle. And now you're scared," Marcus finished for her. "You're scared because for the first time in your life, you can't guarantee the outcome. You can't work harder, or push through, or force success through sheer willpower. You have to trust the process and accept that you might not get the result you want." Victoria was crying again. She hated how much she'd been crying lately. 2 years of building walls and Marcus Cole had torn them down in a single day. "How do I do this?" she whispered. "How do I try when I might fail?" "The same way anyone does," Marcus said. "One step at a time. One day at a time. One choice at a time." "That's not helpful." "It's the only thing that is helpful." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "Victoria, I can't promise you'll walk again. Dr. Chen can't promise you'll walk again. Nobody can promise that. But I can promise you this: if you don't try, you'll never know what might have been. And that kind of regret, that's worse than any failure." Victoria looked at Dr. Chen's business card, now crumpled from being clutched too tightly. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm more scared than I've ever been in my life." "Good," Marcus said. "Being scared means you still have something to fight for. That's not weakness, Victoria. That's the first step toward strength." After they hung up, Victoria sat in her car for another hour. She thought about Claire's voice on the phone last night, thick with tears and hope. She thought about Marcus Cole's absolute conviction that she was worth saving. She thought about Dr. Chen's challenge, not whether she might fail, but whether she could live with herself if she didn't try. And she thought about the woman she wanted to be. Not the bitter, broken creature she'd become, but someone her daughter could be proud of. Someone who faced her fears instead of hiding behind walls. Someone who chose courage over comfort. Victoria picked up her phone and dialed Dr. Chen's number. He answered on the second ring, as if he'd been waiting. "It's Victoria Sterling. she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "I've made my decision. I want to try. I want to fight. When can we start?" "Tomorrow," Dr. Chen said, and Victoria could hear the smile in his voice. 7 a.m. "And Victoria, I'm going to work you harder than any marathon you've ever run. I'm going to push you past every limit you think you have. There will be days you hate me, days you want to quit, days you're convinced I'm torturing you for no reason. I understand. But if you give me everything you have, if you fight with the same determination that got you through Boston and New York and Chicago, I believe we can make Marcus Cole's promise come true." Victoria looked down at her legs, still motionless, still useless, still a constant reminder of everything she'd lost. But for the first time in 783 days, she didn't just see loss when she looked at them, she saw possibility. "I'll be there at 7, she said. "And Dr. Chen, thank you for giving me a chance." "Don't thank me yet," Dr. Chen replied. "Thank me when you're walking out of my facility on your own 2 feet." Victoria ended the call and finally went inside. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it, expensive, tasteful, and completely empty. The furniture cost a fortune, but held no memories. The art on the walls was beautiful but meaningless. Everything about this place screamed success, and all of it felt hollow. But tonight something was different. Tonight Victoria didn't feel hollow. She felt alive, terrified, uncertain, completely out of her depth, but alive in a way she hadn't been since before the accident. Victoria wheeled herself to the bedroom window and looked out at the Baltimore skyline. Somewhere out there, Marcus Cole was tucking his daughter into bed, telling her stories about strength and courage and never giving up. Somewhere out there, Dr. Chen was preparing for tomorrow, planning how to rebuild a broken woman one painful step at a time. Somewhere out there, Claire was probably lying awake too, hoping and praying that her mother would finally come back to her. "I'm going to walk again," Victoria whispered to the empty room. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a certainty. It was something more fragile than that, a declaration of intent, a statement of faith, a choice. Victoria Sterling had spent 2 years choosing anger over hope, bitterness over vulnerability, walls over connection. She'd pushed away everyone who tried to help her, destroyed relationships she'd spent a lifetime building, turned herself into a monster, because being a monster was easier than being human. But tonight, she made a different choice. Tonight, she chose to try. She pulled out her phone and sent a text to Claire. "I start therapy tomorrow, 7 a.m. I'm terrified, but I'm doing it. I love you." The response came almost immediately. "I love you too, Mom. I'm so proud of you. You've got this." Victoria read the message 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she set her alarm for 5 a.m. and went to bed. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. And for the first time in 2 years, Victoria Sterling was ready. The first session nearly destroyed her. Victoria arrived at the rehabilitation center at 6:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. Her stomach twisted into knots so tight she could barely breathe. She'd slept maybe 2 hours the night before, her mind racing through every possible scenario. Success, failure, humiliation, triumph, until the alarm finally released her from the torture of waiting. Dr. Chen was already there, dressed in workout clothes, his expression calm and focused. "Good," he said when she rolled through the door. "You're early. That tells me something." "What does it tell you?" "That you're scared enough to overcompensate. Fear makes people either late or early. The ones who show up late are already looking for excuses to quit. The ones who show up early are fighting their fear instead of surrendering to it." Victoria didn't know how to respond to that. She'd spent 2 years pretending she wasn't afraid of anything, and now this man was reading her like a book she'd never bothered to open. "Let's get started," Dr. Chen said. "Today is assessment day. I need to understand exactly what your body can and can't do before we build a treatment plan." The assessment was brutal. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally. Dr. Chen tested every muscle group, every nerve pathway, every connection between Victoria's brain and her body. He asked her to try movements she hadn't attempted in 2 years and watched without judgment as she failed again and again. Try to lift your right leg. Nothing. Try to flex your foot. Nothing. Try to feel this. He pressed a tool against her thigh, and Victoria concentrated with everything she had, searching for sensation that might have been there, or might have been wishful thinking. Maybe, she said finally. I think I felt something, but I'm not sure if it's real, or if I just want it to be real. That uncertainty is actually good news, Dr. Chen said, making notes. Complete injuries don't create uncertainty. The fact that you're not sure means something is still there. After 2 hours of testing, Dr. Chen sat down across from her. Here's what I know, he said. Your injury is definitely incomplete. You have preserved sensation in several areas, and I detected muscle response in your right hip flexor very weak, but present. That's more than I expected based on your medical records. What does that mean? It means your body has been waiting for you. 2 years of doing nothing, and you still have more function than most patients who've been in aggressive therapy for months. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Victoria, I'm going to be direct with you. You have a real chance here. A better chance than I originally estimated. But only if you're willing to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. I ran marathons. I know how to work hard. This will be harder. Dr. Chen's voice was flat matter-of-fact. Marathons are about pushing through pain when you know the finish line exists. This is about pushing through pain when you don't know if there's a finish line at all. That requires a different kind of strength. I understand. No, you don't. Not yet. But you will. The real work started the next day. Victoria had thought she understood pain. She'd run marathons where her legs screamed for mercy. She'd pushed through injuries that would have stopped lesser athletes. She'd built a corporate empire through sheer force of will, crushing obstacles that would have broken anyone else. But this was different. Again, Dr. Chen commanded. Victoria lay on the therapy table, sweat soaking through her clothes, every muscle in her body trembling from exertion. The exercise was simple. In theory, engage her core. Activate her hip flexors, try to create the smallest movement in her right leg. She'd been trying for 45 minutes. Nothing had happened. I can't, she gasped. It's not working. I told you this was pointless. You're trying to use strength, Dr. Chen said, placing his hand on her abdomen. Stop, breathe. Feel the connection between your brain and your body. It's still there, Victoria. You just have to remember how to find it. I've been trying for almost an hour. There's nothing to find. Again. Victoria wanted to scream. She wanted to throw something, to curse, to wheel herself out of this place and never come back. Dr. Chen was torturing her for no reason. The connection was gone. Her legs were dead weight that would never respond no matter how hard she tried. But she thought about Marcus Cole's face when he'd promised to make her walk again. She thought about Claire's voice on the phone, thick with hope and tears. She thought about the woman she'd been before the accident, the marathon runner, the fighter, the person who never quit. Victoria closed her eyes and tried again. Focus. Breathe. Feel. Her brain sent the signal. Move. Please just move. Nothing. I hate this, Victoria whispered. I hate you. I hate Marcus Cole for convincing me to try. Good, Dr. Chen said. Anger is energy. Use it. What? You've spent 2 years being angry at the world. Now be angry at your injury. Be furious with your body for not cooperating. Channel every ounce of that rage into making something happen. It was the strangest therapy advice Victoria had ever heard. But she tried. She thought about her ex-husband who'd called her damaged goods and walked away. She thought about every pitying look from strangers who saw the wheelchair before they saw her. She thought about 2 years of wasted time, wasted life, wasted everything. She thought about Claire's face the last time she'd visited, the disappointment, the exhaustion, the grief for a mother who was still breathing, but somehow already gone. Victoria got angry. Not sad angry. Not defeated angry, pure burning fight-back angry. She took a breath, focused every molecule of rage in her body, and sent the signal one more time. Her right toe moved, barely a millimeter. So small it might have been imagination, but Dr. Chen saw it. "There," he said quietly, his hand still on her abdomen. "You felt that, didn't you?" Victoria's breath caught. "Did I? Was that real?" "Again," Dr. Chen commanded. "Right now, while the pathway is active." Victoria tried again, and this time she felt it the faintest sensation, like static electricity running from her brain down her spine into her leg. Her toe moved again. Definitely this time, visible. Victoria started crying. Not from frustration this time, but from something she'd thought was dead inside her. Joy. Pure, overwhelming, terrifying joy. "I did it," she whispered. "Oh my God, I actually did it." "That's your baseline," Dr. Chen said, making notes on his tablet. "That tiny movement is where we start. Tomorrow we try for 2 millimeters. Next week maybe we get your whole foot involved. In a month," Victoria's hope blazed bright. "In a month, I'll be walking." Dr. Chen's expression sobered. "In a month, you might be able to lift your leg an inch off the table." The joy dimmed. "What?" "Victoria, I need you to understand something crucial. What just happened, that tiny toe movement, represents weeks of progress for most patients. You're going to need patience I'm not sure you possess." "How long?" Victoria's voice was barely audible. "How long until I walk?" "If everything goes perfectly. 6 months minimum. More realistically, a year. Maybe longer." "A year?" Victoria's heart cracked. "A year of this. A year of harder than this," Dr. Chen corrected. "What we did today was the easy part. Next week I'm introducing electrical stimulation. It's going to hurt. The week after we add weight resistance. That's going to hurt more. We're going to rebuild neural pathways your brain forgot existed, and the process is going to be agonizing." He sat down beside her, his expression serious. "This is your last chance to walk away, Victoria. Once we really begin, once you commit to the full protocol, backing out means wasting months of progress. So I'm asking you now, with full knowledge of what's ahead, are you absolutely certain you want to do this?" Victoria thought about that single toe movement, about the electrical sensation of her brain reconnecting with her body, about Claire's voice on the phone, saying she'd been waiting for her mother to come back. "I'm certain," she said. The weeks that followed were the hardest of Victoria's life. Every session pushed her to the breaking point. Every exercise demanded more than she thought she had to give. Every tiny progress was followed by setbacks, plateaus, moments where it seemed like all her effort was accomplishing nothing. "Again," Dr. Chen would say, and Victoria would try again. "Again," he would say, and she would fail again. "Again," he would say, and sometimes she would succeed. 3 millimeters, 5 millimeters, a centimeter. Progress so small, it felt meaningless, like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. But Victoria kept showing up. Every morning at 7 a.m., every session lasting 3 hours, every day ending with her body screaming and her spirit barely hanging on. Claire started visiting the rehabilitation center. At first just once a week, then twice, then almost every session. She'd sit in the corner, watching her mother fight, cheering every tiny victory, holding her hand through every crushing defeat. "I'm so proud of you," Claire would say after each session. Victoria would shake her head, exhausted. "I moved my toe 3 millimeters today. 3 millimeters. At this rate, I'll be walking by my 80th birthday." "But you moved it," Claire would insist. 3 weeks ago, you couldn't move it at all." It was the same thing Marcus Cole said when he called, and he called every few days, checking in, offering encouragement, reminding Victoria why she'd started this journey in the first place. "You're doing amazing," Marcus would say. "I'm failing," Victoria would reply. "I'm barely making progress." "You're not failing, you're fighting. There's a difference." Month 2 brought the electrical stimulation Dr. Chen had promised. It was worse than Victoria had imagined. Targeted pulses forced her muscles to contract firing signals along pathways her brain had forgotten existed. The sensation was bizarre and deeply uncomfortable, like being shocked from the inside over and over for hours at a time. Muscle memory isn't just a metaphor, Dr. Chen explained as Victoria gritted her teeth through another round of stimulation. Your muscles literally remember how to function. We're just reminding them. This is torture. This is progress. Your muscles responded to that last pulse. Did you feel it? Victoria had felt something, a twitch, a tremor, a ghost of movement in muscles that had been silent for 2 years. I think so. Good. Again. Month 3 brought the parallel bars. Victoria stared at them like they were instruments of torture, 2 metal rails waist-high, designed to support patients learning to stand and walk. She'd seen other patients using them, gripping the bars, while their legs shook and their faces twisted with effort. Now it was her turn. I can't do this, Victoria said. You can, Dr. Chen replied. Your muscle strength has improved significantly. Your sensation is returning. Your neural pathways are rebuilding. You're ready. I'm not ready. I'll fall. You might. That's why I'm here. Dr. Chen positioned himself behind her with a support harness. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Victoria pulled herself up, her arms strained, her core engaged, her legs held. For exactly 4 seconds, Victoria Sterling stood on her own 2 feet. Then her legs buckled, and Dr. Chen caught her, lowering her gently back into the wheelchair. Victoria was sobbing before she even realized it was happening. Deep, wrenching sobs that tore themselves from somewhere she'd locked away for 2 years. I stood, she gasped between sobs. I actually stood. 4.2 seconds. Dr. Chen confirmed, making notes. New personal record. 4 seconds. That's nothing. That's everything. 4 seconds ago, you hadn't stood in over 2 years. Now you have. Tomorrow, we aim for 5. That night, Victoria called Marcus. I stood today, she said, her voice still thick with emotion. Just for a few seconds. But I stood. The silence on Marcus's end lasted so long, Victoria thought the call had dropped. Marcus. I'm here. His voice was rough, emotional, in a way she'd never heard from him before. Victoria, I'm so proud of you. Those words broke something open inside her chest. I haven't heard that in so long, she whispered. Not from my ex-husband, not from my colleagues. Claire says it, but hearing it from you? She stopped, unable to continue. You're doing something incredible, Marcus said. Something most people wouldn't have the courage to attempt. That deserves recognition. They talked for an hour. Marcus told her about Lily's latest soccer game, about a difficult repair at the shop, about normal life, continuing outside Victoria's bubble of therapy and pain. It felt almost like friendship. Marcus, Victoria said before hanging up, why do you still care? You've done more than enough. You saved my life with the brake lines. You connected me with Dr. Chen. You don't owe me anything else. I don't do it because I owe you something, Marcus replied. I do it because some people are worth believing in, even when they've forgotten how to believe in themselves. Month 4 brought crisis. Victoria woke up one morning and couldn't move her legs at all. No sensation, no response, nothing. She lay in bed, tears streaming down her face, convinced that everything she'd worked for had been erased overnight. The neural pathways she'd spent months rebuilding had collapsed. Her body had betrayed her again, and this time, there was no coming back. It's called a setback, Dr. Chen explained when Victoria arrived at the rehabilitation center in hysterics. They're common in spinal cord rehabilitation. Your nervous system is rewiring itself, and sometimes it needs to reset. Reset. I've lost everything. You haven't lost anything. Watch. Dr. Chen performed the same tests he'd done on her first day. Pressed tools against her legs. Asked her to try movements she'd been practicing for months. And Victoria felt it. Faint, but there. Your sensation is actually improved from yesterday. Dr. Chen said. The setback is temporary. Your body is reorganizing, and when it finishes, you'll be stronger than before. You promise? I promise. It took 2 weeks for Victoria to return to where she'd been before the setback. 2 weeks of terror, of doubt, of nights spent staring at the ceiling, convinced she'd never walk again. But she came back. Stronger, just like Dr. Chen had promised. Month 5 brought a breakthrough Victoria never expected. She was in the parallel bars practicing standing when Dr. Chen said something that made her heart stop. Let go of the left bar. Victoria stared at him. What? Trust your body. Trust yourself. Let go. I'll fall. Maybe. That's why I'm here. Victoria looked at her hands white-knuckled on the parallel bars. She'd been standing for almost a minute, her new record, but she'd never attempted anything without both bars supporting her. This was insane. This was impossible. This was... Victoria let go of the left bar. Her body swayed. Her right arm tensed, gripping the remaining bar with desperate strength. Her legs trembled so violently she could feel the vibration in her teeth. But she didn't fall. Oh my God, Victoria breathed. Oh my God, I'm doing it. Now, Doctor, Chen said, his voice barely above a whisper. Take 1 step forward. I can't. Yes, you can. Victoria looked at her right foot, willing it to move. Her brain sent the signal. Her muscles responded slowly, painfully, imperfectly, but they responded. She lifted her foot. For a moment, she teetered on the edge of falling, her entire body weight balanced on one trembling leg. Then she shifted forward, and her right foot touched the ground 6 inches ahead of where it had been. 1 step. 1 single, shaking, imperfect step. Victoria collapsed into Dr. Chen's arms, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. He held her, supporting her weight, letting her cry out months of fear and doubt and pain. You did it, he said quietly. 1 step. After 2 years and 5 months, Victoria Sterling took 1 step. I want to do it again. Victoria gasped through her sobs. I want to take another one. Tomorrow. Right now your body needs rest. No. Now. I need to know it wasn't a fluke. I need to know I can do it again. Dr. Chen hesitated, then nodded. He helped Victoria back to the parallel bars, positioned her carefully, made sure she was stable. Whenever you're ready, he said. Victoria gripped the right bar with her right hand, leaving her left arm free. She focused on her legs, on the connection she'd spent 5 months rebuilding, on the anger and hope and determination that had gotten her this far. She took another step, then another. 3 steps total. 3 small, shaking, miraculous steps. Victoria looked up at Dr. Chen, tears streaming down her face, and started laughing. Not the bitter, broken laugh she'd used like a weapon for 2 years. A real laugh full of joy and disbelief and something that felt dangerously close to happiness. I took 3 steps, she said. I can't believe I took 3 steps. Believe it, Dr. Chen replied, and he was smiling too. Because tomorrow we're going for 4. That night, Claire drove Victoria home from the rehabilitation center. They sat in silence for the first few minutes, both of them processing what had happened. Then Claire spoke, her voice thick with emotion. Mom, I need to tell you something. What? When you called me that night, 2 a.m. out of nowhere, talking about a mechanic who'd saved your life, I thought you were having a breakdown. I thought you'd finally cracked under the weight of everything you'd been carrying. Victoria said nothing, letting her daughter continue. But then you started therapy, and I watched you fight. Every session, every setback, every tiny victory. I watched you become someone I recognized again. Claire's voice broke. I watched my mom come back. I'm not all the way back yet, Victoria said quietly. 3 steps isn't walking. 3 steps is everything. Claire pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her mother. Do you remember what you used to tell me when I was little? When I was scared to try something new? Victoria shook her head. You used to say, courage isn't being unafraid. Courage is being terrified and doing it anyway. Claire's eyes were wet. I watched you live those words, Mom. For 5 months I watched you be terrified and do it anyway. And I have never been prouder of anyone in my entire life." Victoria reached across the car and pulled her daughter into a hug. They held each other for a long time, crying and laughing and healing wounds that had festered for 2 years. "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered, "for everything. For pushing you away. For becoming a monster. For making you feel like you'd lost your mother." "You're here now," Claire replied. "That's what matters. You're here, and you're fighting, and you're coming back. That's all I ever wanted." They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. When they arrived at Victoria's apartment, Claire helped her mother transfer from the car to the wheelchair. But before Victoria could wheel herself inside, Claire stopped her. "Wait," Claire said. "I want to try something." "What?" Claire positioned herself in front of Victoria, holding out her hands. "Stand up." "Claire, I don't have the parallel bars." "You have me. Stand up. I'll support you." Nalua. Victoria looked at her daughter's outstretched hands, at the determination in her young face, at the love that had somehow survived 2 years of cruelty and neglect. She reached out and took Claire's hands. Then slowly, carefully, Victoria Sterling stood up. Her legs shook. Her balance was precarious. But Claire held her steady, and Victoria stood in the parking lot of her apartment building, holding her daughter's hands, standing on her own 2 feet. "I love you, Mom," Claire said. "I love you too, sweetheart." They stood together for 30 seconds, a new record, before Victoria's legs gave out and she sank back into the wheelchair. But those 30 seconds changed everything. Because Victoria realized, sitting in her wheelchair with her daughter's hand still clasped in hers, that walking wasn't the real goal. It had never been the real goal. The real goal was this: connection, love, being the mother Claire deserved. And that goal Victoria realized she'd already achieved. The walking would come. Step by step, day by day, month by month. She would fight and struggle and probably cry more tears than she thought she had left. But she would get there. Because Victoria Sterling had finally remembered who she was. A fighter. A survivor. A mother who would move mountains for her daughter. A woman who refused to stay broken. Month 6 brought the moment Victoria had been dreading. She stood in the parallel bars, gripping both rails, her legs trembling with the effort of holding her weight. Dr. Chen had just finished telling her something that made her blood run cold. "Your progress has stalled," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "For the past 3 weeks, you've been at the same level. 10 steps with the bars, 5 steps with the walker. No improvement." "I've been trying," Victoria said through gritted teeth. "I've been giving everything I have." "I know. That's the problem." Victoria's grip tightened on the bars. "What do you mean that's the problem?" Dr. Chen pulled up a chair and sat down, meeting her eyes with the same directness he'd shown from the first day. "Victoria, you've made remarkable progress. 6 months ago you couldn't move your toe. Now you can walk 10 steps with support. That's extraordinary. But I'm going to be honest with you, this might be as far as you go." The words hit like a physical blow. What? Not every patient achieves full recovery. Some plateau at a certain level and never progress further. Your body has done incredible work rebuilding neural pathways, but there may be damage that simply can't be repaired. Victoria shook her head violently. "No, that's not acceptable. You told me I had a 60 to 70% chance of walking with assistance. I'm walking with assistance. You said 40% chance of walking independently. I want that 40%. And you might get it, but you might not." Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "I need you to start preparing yourself for the possibility that this is your new normal. Walking with a walker or a cane. Not running marathons. Not walking independently. This." Victoria released the bars and sank into her wheelchair, her body suddenly too heavy to hold upright. "So all of this was for nothing," she whispered. 6 months of torture and I end up right back where I started." "You're not where you started. You can stand. You can take steps. You can move through the world with more independence than you had 6 months ago. But I can't walk. Not really. Not the way you promised. I never promised anything. Dr. Chen's voice sharpened slightly. I gave you percentages. I gave you possibilities. I told you from the beginning that success wasn't guaranteed. Victoria felt the old anger rising in her chest, the familiar comfortable rage that had been her constant companion for 2 years. It would be so easy to give in to it. So easy to blame Dr. Chen, to blame Marcus Cole, to blame the universe for dangling hope in front of her and then snatching it away. But then she thought about Claire. Her daughter had been at every therapy session for the past 3 months. She'd watched Victoria fight, struggle, triumph, and fail. She'd held her mother's hand through setbacks and celebrated every tiny victory. If Victoria gave up now, if she let the anger win again, she would lose her daughter all over again. What do I do? Victoria asked, her voice small. How do I accept this? You don't have to accept it, Dr. Chen said. Not yet. I'm not saying you've reached your limit. I'm saying you've reached a plateau. Plateaus can be broken through, but only if you're willing to try something different. What do you mean? I've been pushing your body for 6 months. Working your muscles, rebuilding your neural pathways, forcing your nervous system to remember what it used to know. Dr. Chen leaned forward. But Victoria, I think the problem isn't your body anymore. I think the problem is your mind. My mind is fine. Is it? Dr. Chen's eyes held hers. Because I've watched you in therapy. You give maximum effort during exercises. You push yourself to exhaustion. But the moment you start to succeed, the moment it looks like you might actually break through, something happens. You pull back. You sabotage yourself. Victoria wanted to deny it, but somewhere deep inside she knew he was right. I don't know how to stop, she admitted. I don't know how to let myself succeed. Why not? The question hung in the air. Victoria searched for an answer, digging through layers of fear and anger and self-protection, until she found the truth she'd been hiding from for 6 months. Because if I succeed, I lose my excuse. For what? For everything. Victoria's voice broke. For being angry, for pushing people away, for being cruel. As long as I'm in this wheelchair, I can blame my disability for everything wrong with my life. But if I walk again... She stopped struggling to put the truth into words. If I walk again, I'll have to face the fact that I was a terrible person even before the accident. That the wheelchair didn't make me bitter and cruel. That I was already broken, and the chair was just an excuse to stop pretending otherwise. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me, he finally replied. And Victoria, it tells me something important. What? That you're ready to break through this plateau. Not because your body is ready, it's been ready for weeks, but because your mind is finally willing to let you succeed. Victoria spent that night on the phone with Marcus Cole. She told him everything, Dr. Chen's words, the plateau, the fear of success that had been holding her back. Marcus listened without interrupting his silence, somehow more comforting than any words could have been. I've been sabotaging myself, Victoria said. For 6 months I've been working as hard as I can to succeed while secretly making sure I fail. And I didn't even know I was doing it. Did you know? Marcus asked gently. Or did you just not want to admit it? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Maybe both. Victoria, can I tell you something about Lily's recovery? Please. There was a moment about 4 months into her therapy when she stopped making progress. Same thing Dr. Chen described. She was trying as hard as she could, but nothing was working. Her physical therapist said her body was ready to take the next step, but something was holding her back. What was it? She was afraid that if she got better, I'd stop paying attention to her. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. Her mom had just died. I was working double shifts to pay the medical bills. The only time she had my undivided attention was during therapy. So part of her, a part she didn't even know existed, was making sure she stayed sick, because sick meant I'd keep showing up. Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. How did she get past it? I quit my second job, told her I was going to be there whether she was sick or healthy, that my love wasn't dependent on her needing me. Marcus paused. She walked independently 2 weeks later. You think that's what's happening with me? I think you've spent 2 years believing you don't deserve to be happy, believing you have to earn love, earn success, earn everything. And part of you is terrified that if you walk again, you'll have to face a world where there are no excuses, where you're responsible for your own happiness. Victoria closed her eyes, letting the truth of his words wash over her. How do I stop being afraid? You don't, Marcus said simply. You just decide that being afraid isn't a good enough reason to stay stuck. You choose to move forward even though it's terrifying. That's what courage is, not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more. What matters more? That's for you to figure out. But Victoria, I think you already know. The next morning, Victoria arrived at the rehabilitation center with a new determination. I need to talk to you, she told Dr. Chen before the session started, about what's been holding me back. I'm listening. Victoria took a deep breath. I've been afraid of success because I don't think I deserve it. I spent 2 years being cruel, pushing people away, destroying relationships. Part of me believes I should be punished for that I should stay in this chair as penance for the person I became. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. And now I realize that staying broken isn't penance, it's cowardice. It's easier to be a victim than to take responsibility for my own healing, and I'm done being a coward. What do you want to do about it? Victoria looked at the parallel bars, then at the walker sitting in the corner, then at the open space of the rehabilitation center. I want to walk without the bars, she said. Today, right now. I want to prove to myself that I can do it. Victoria, I know it's not part of the protocol. I know I'm supposed to build up gradually, but Dr. Chen, I've been building up for 6 months. My body is ready. My mind was the problem, and now my mind is ready too. Victoria met his eyes. Please, let me try. Dr. Chen studied her for a long moment. Then he walked to the corner and retrieved the walker. Not without the walker, he said. Not yet, but I'll make you a deal. Take 20 steps with the walker across the room and back, and then we'll talk about what comes next. 20 steps isn't enough, I can already do. You can do 5 steps with the walker before your legs give out. I want 20, continuous, no stopping. Victoria looked at the walker, then at the distance across the rehabilitation center. It was maybe 30 feet to the far wall and back. 20 steps would be nothing for a healthy person. For her, it would be a marathon. Okay, she said. 20 steps. Dr. Chen positioned the walker in front of her. Victoria gripped the handles, pulled herself up, and started walking. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. Her legs trembled. Her arms ached from supporting her weight. Every step felt like pushing through wet concrete. Step 4, Step 5, Step 6. She was already past her previous limit. Her body screamed at her to stop, to rest, to sink back into the wheelchair, and accept that this was as good as it would ever get. Step 7, Step 8. You're doing great, Doctor, Chen said from behind her. Keep going. Step 9, Step 10, halfway there. Victoria's vision was starting to blur from the effort. Sweat dripped down her face. Her hands were slippery on the walker handles. Step 11, Step 12. She reached the far wall, turned carefully, and started back. Step 13. Step 14. Step 15. Her right leg buckled. Victoria caught herself on the walker, gasping, her whole body shaking. 5 more steps, Dr. Chen said. You can do this. I can't. You can. 5 more steps, Victoria. That's all. Victoria thought about Claire, about Marcus, about Lily, who'd been younger and more broken than Victoria, and had still found the strength to walk again. She thought about the woman she used to be, the marathon runner who'd pushed through walls, who'd refused to quit, who'd built an empire through sheer force of will. That woman was still inside her, buried, beaten, but not dead. Victoria took another step. Step 16. Another. Step 17. Her legs were on fire. Her arms were shaking so badly she could barely grip the walker. Step 18. She could see her wheelchair now. Just a few more feet. Step 19. One more, Dr. Chen said. One more step, Victoria. Victoria gathered everything she had left, every ounce of strength, every molecule of determination, every drop of hope she'd accumulated over 6 months of brutal therapy, and took one final step. Step 20. Her legs gave out completely. Dr. Chen caught her, lowering her gently into the wheelchair. Victoria collapsed against the back of the chair, sobbing and laughing at the same time. "I did it," she gasped. 20 steps. I did it. "You did," Dr. Chen confirmed. His voice was thick with emotion, the first time Victoria had ever heard him sound anything less than completely professional. "Victoria, that was incredible. What now? What's next?" Dr. Chen smiled. "Now we start workings on 21. The weeks that followed were different. Something had shifted inside Victoria, some wall that had been blocking her progress had finally crumbled. She attacked every therapy session with new intensity, but it wasn't the desperate grinding effort of before. It was focused, purposeful, driven by something deeper than fear. 21 steps became 25, 25 became 30. By the end of month 7, Victoria was walking 50 steps with the walker without stopping. "I want to try the cane," she told Dr. Chen. "Are you sure the cane provides much less support than—" "I'm sure." The first attempt with the cane was a disaster. Victoria made it 3 steps before her legs buckled, and Dr. Chen had to catch her. But she tried again, and again, and again. By the end of month 8, she was walking across the rehabilitation center with nothing but a cane and her own determination. "I want to show Claire," Victoria said after one particularly successful session. "I want her to see me walk." "She's seen you walk dozens of times. With the walker. With the parallel bars. With you standing right behind me, ready to catch me. I want her to see me walk on my own, really walk." Dr. Chen considered for a moment. "Next week, if you can walk 30 feet with the cane without stopping, we'll arrange a demonstration for Claire." Victoria trained for that demonstration like she'd trained for her first marathon. Every session focused on distance, stability, confidence. She visualized the moment over and over Claire's face when she saw her mother walking, really walking for the first time in over 2 years. The day arrived. Claire came to the rehabilitation center after school, nervous and excited. Dr. Chen positioned her at one end of the room, Victoria at the other. "Mom, are you sure about this?" Claire asked. "You don't have to prove anything to me." "I'm not proving anything to you," Victoria replied. "I'm proving it to myself." She gripped her cane, took a deep breath, and started walking. Step by step, one foot in front of the other. Her legs trembled, but held. Her balance wavered, but steadied. The distance that had seemed impossible 6 months ago now felt almost manageable. Halfway across the room, Victoria looked up and saw Claire crying. "Don't cry," Victoria called out, her voice shaking. "I'm not done yet." "I can't help it," Claire sobbed. "Mom, you're walking. You're really walking." Victoria kept going. 20 feet, 25, 30. She reached her daughter and wrapped her arms around her, the cane clattering to the floor as they embraced. "I did it," Victoria whispered into Claire's hair. "I told you I'd come back to you." "You did." Claire was crying so hard she could barely speak. "God, Mom, you did." They stood there for a long time, mother and daughter holding each other in the middle of a rehabilitation center while Dr. Chen quietly wiped his eyes in the corner. That night, Victoria called Marcus. "I walked 30 feet with a cane today," she said. "Claire was there. She watched me do it." Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I knew you could do it," he said. "From the first day you rolled into my shop, I knew you had it in you. You didn't know anything about me. I was horrible to you. I knew the horror was a mask. I knew there was someone real underneath all that anger. Someone who'd been hurt so badly she'd forgotten how to be human." Marcus paused. "I'm glad she found her way back. She found her way back because of you. Because you believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." "Victoria, I didn't do anything. I fixed your car. I gave you a phone number. Everything else, all the hard work, all the pain, all the progress, that was you. But you started it. You looked at me, this cruel, bitter woman who'd treated you like dirt, and you saw someone worth saving. Why?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. "Because Lily's mother did the same for me once," he finally said. "After her diagnosis, after we knew she was dying, I shut down. I pushed everyone away. I became someone I didn't recognize. And Sarah, my wife, she never gave up on me. Even when I was at my worst, she kept believing I'd find my way back." She sounds incredible. She was. She died 3 years ago, and not a day goes by that I don't miss her. But she taught me something that I've tried to live by ever since. What's that? That people aren't defined by their worst moments. That everyone deserves someone who sees their potential even when they can't see it themselves. That love isn't about what people deserve, it's about what they need. Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, I don't know how to thank you for everything." "Walk into my shop on your own 2 feet," Marcus said. "That's all the thanks I need." Month 9, Month 10, Month 11. Victoria's progress continued slower now, but steady. Walking with a cane became walking with just a slight limp. The wheelchair that had been her prison for 2 years sat unused in the corner of her apartment, a reminder of how far she'd come. She started physical therapy twice a week instead of 3 times, then once a week, then once every 2 weeks. Her company, which she'd neglected for almost a year, was still running barely. Victoria had delegated everything to her executive team, and they'd kept things afloat. But something had changed in her relationship with work. The corporate restructuring that used to feel like a mission now felt hollow. Dismantling companies, firing employees, turning human beings into line items on spreadsheets. It all seemed so pointless compared to what she'd learned over the past year. "I'm thinking about making some changes," Victoria told Claire one evening over dinner. Real dinner at a restaurant, something they hadn't done in over 2 years. "What kind of changes?" "My company. What I do for a living. I've spent my career helping businesses cut costs by cutting people. And I'm good at it, maybe the best in the industry. But I don't want to do it anymore." Claire set down her fork, giving her mother her full attention. "What do you want to do instead?" "I want to help people. Really help them. Not just make shareholders richer by making workers poorer." Victoria paused, gathering her thoughts. "Do you know how much physical therapy costs?" "For someone like me without insurance, a lot, I'm guessing. Almost $200,000 over the past year. Dr. Chen gave me a significant discount because Marcus referred me, but even so, if I hadn't been wealthy, I never would have been able to afford treatment. I would have spent the rest of my life in that wheelchair because I couldn't afford to fight for something better." "So you want to change that?" "I want to create a foundation. Fund rehabilitation therapy for people who can't afford it. Give them the same chance I had the chance to fight to try to rebuild their lives." Victoria met her daughter's eyes. "What do you think?" Claire reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "I think," Claire said slowly, "that's the most amazing thing I've ever heard, and I think Dad would have been proud of you." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Her ex-husband Claire's father had left her after the accident. He'd called her damaged goods and walked away without looking back. But there had been a time before everything fell apart when he'd been a good man. When he'd believed in things bigger than profit margins and stock prices. "I hope so," Victoria whispered. "I really hope so." Month 12. 1 year since Victoria Sterling had rolled into Cole's auto repair in a fury. 1 year since a mechanic with grease on his hands had promised to make her walk again. Victoria stood in front of her mirror studying the woman who stared back at her. She looked different. Not just physically, though. The months of therapy had changed. Her body made her stronger, leaner, more present in her own skin. But something deeper had changed too. The hardness around her eyes had softened. The bitter lines around her mouth had eased. She looked like someone who'd been through hell and come out the other side. She looked like herself again. "You ready?" Claire asked from the doorway. Victoria nodded. "Let's go." They drove to Marcus Cole's garage, the same struggling shop where everything had started. Victoria's heart pounded as they pulled into the parking lot as she saw the familiar sign, the oil-stained pavement, the small building that had somehow become sacred ground. Marcus was waiting outside. Behind him stood Tommy and Derek and the other mechanics who'd witnessed that first terrible encounter. And next to Marcus, holding his hand, was Lily. Victoria opened her car door. She didn't reach for her cane. She didn't wait for Claire to help her. She simply stood up, planted her feet on the pavement, and started walking. 20 feet to where Marcus stood. 20 feet that had seemed impossible a year ago. 20 feet that now felt like victory. Victoria reached Marcus and stopped tears streaming down her face. "You came back," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I came back," Victoria confirmed. "On my own 2 feet. Just like you promised." Marcus opened his arms, and Victoria fell into them. They held each other for a long moment, two people who'd started as strangers and become something much more. Not lovers. Not exactly friends. Something deeper than either of those words could capture. Family, maybe. The family you choose. "Thank you," Victoria whispered against his shoulder, "for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." "Thank you," Marcus replied, "for proving me right." They separated, both wiping their eyes. Lily ran forward and hugged Victoria's legs, nearly knocking her off balance. "You walked," Lily exclaimed. "You really walked. I told Dad you would. I told him from the very beginning." Victoria laughed, ruffling the girl's hair. "You did, didn't you? I guess you're smarter than both of us." "Obviously," Lily said with all the confidence of a 10-year-old who'd defeated her own impossible odds. Victoria straightened up and reached into her purse. She pulled out an envelope and handed it to Marcus. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it." Marcus opened the envelope and pulled out a check. His eyes went wide. "Victoria, this is—" "The down payment," Victoria said. "For the foundation, the Cole Chen Foundation for Rehabilitation Services. I'm going to fund physical therapy for people who can't afford it. Give them the same chance you gave me." Marcus stared at the check, then at Victoria, then at the check again. "I can't accept this." "You're not accepting it. You're partnering with me. You and Dr. Chen. We're going to build something together, something that helps people who've lost hope find their way back." "Victoria, I'm a mechanic. I don't know anything about running a foundation. And a year ago, I didn't know anything about walking. We figured that out. We'll figure this out too." Victoria smiled. "Besides, I'm going to need your help. The foundation won't just fund therapy. It's going to help people find their reason to fight. And nobody's better at that than you." Marcus looked at Lily, then at Claire, then at the mechanics gathered behind him, then at Victoria standing on her own 2 feet in the parking lot of his struggling garage. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's build something together." Victoria smiled, a real smile, the kind she'd almost forgotten how to make. "Let's build something together," she agreed. And standing there, surrounded by the people who'd helped her find her way back, Victoria Sterling finally understood what Marcus Cole had known from the very beginning. That nobody was beyond repair. That everyone deserved someone who believed in them. And that sometimes the most broken people had the most to give once they learned how to put themselves back together. 2 years later, Victoria Sterling walked through the doors of the Cole Chen Rehabilitation Center without a cane. The building had opened 6 months ago, a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Baltimore that now housed state-of-the-art therapy equipment, a team of 12 physical therapists, and a waiting list of patients 3 months long. Every wall was painted in warm, welcoming colors. Every room was designed to feel like hope instead of hospital. And above the main entrance, etched in bronze letters, were the words that had changed Victoria's life. Nobody is beyond repair. Mrs. Sterling. A young receptionist looked up as Victoria entered. Mr. Cole is waiting for you in the East Wing. He said to tell you it's important. Victoria nodded and made her way through the facility, greeting staff members and patients by name as she passed. She knew every person in this building, had made it her mission to know them, to understand their stories, to remind them that she'd once been exactly where they were now. She found Marcus in the East Wing therapy room, standing with Dr. Chen and a young man in a wheelchair. The young man looked up as Victoria approached, and she recognized the expression on his face immediately. Anger, bitterness, hopelessness. The same expression she'd worn when she'd rolled into Marcus's garage 3 years ago. Victoria, Marcus said. This is Daniel. He's new. I can see that. Victoria walked over and crouched down in front of Daniel's wheelchair, meeting his eyes at his level. How long since your accident? 8 months. Daniel's voice was flat, dead. Motorcycle crash. Drunk driver ran me off the road. Doctors say I'll never walk again. That's what they told me too. Daniel's eyes flickered with something, surprise maybe, or the faintest spark of interest. You were in a wheelchair. For almost 3 years. I couldn't feel my legs, couldn't move my toes, couldn't do anything except sit in that chair and hate everyone around me. Victoria smiled slightly. I was really good at the hating part. So what happened? I met a mechanic who refused to give up on me. Victoria glanced at Marcus, then back at Daniel. He made me a promise that seemed impossible. And then I spent a year of my life proving that impossible things can happen if you're willing to fight for them. Daniel shook his head, the brief spark of interest already fading. That's a nice story. But you're not me. You don't know what I'm going through. You're right. I don't know your specific pain. But I know what it feels like to wake up every morning and wish you hadn't. I know what it feels like to look at your legs and see nothing but failure. I know what it feels like to push away everyone who tries to help, because accepting help means admitting you're broken. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then you know it's pointless. You know that all the therapy in the world won't change the fact that my life is over. Your life isn't over, Victoria said firmly. It's different, and different isn't the same as over. Easy for you to say. You're standing on your own 2 feet. I am. But 2 years ago, I was exactly where you are. Sitting in a wheelchair, convinced that everything good was behind me. Convinced that there was no point in trying, because trying meant risking failure. Victoria paused, choosing her next words carefully. Daniel, I'm not going to tell you that therapy will definitely work. I'm not going to promise you'll walk again. What I'm going to tell you is that not trying guarantees you'll stay exactly where you are. And is that what you want? To spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I'm scared. Good. Victoria stood up. Being scared means you still have something to fight for. That's not weakness. That's the first step toward strength. She looked at Dr. Chen, who nodded. Daniel, doctor. Chen said, I'd like to start with an assessment, just like I did with Victoria 3 years ago. We'll figure out what your body can do, what it can't do, and what we might be able to change. No promises, no guarantees, just possibility. And if I fail? Daniel asked. Then you fail knowing you gave everything you had, Victoria replied. But Daniel, I didn't fail. And I don't think you will either. Daniel looked at Victoria, at Marcus, at Dr. Chen. 3 people who believed in him before he'd given them any reason to. 3 people who saw something in him that he couldn't see in himself. Okay, he said finally. I'll try. Victoria smiled. That's all anyone can ask. She left Daniel with Dr. Chen and walked with Marcus to the observation deck overlooking the main therapy floor. Below them, a dozen patients worked through their exercises, some in wheelchairs, some with walkers, some with canes, some standing on their own 2 feet for the first time in months or years. He's going to be okay, Marcus said, watching Daniel's wheelchair disappear down the hallway. I can see it in him. The fight. I saw it too. Victoria leaned against the railing. It's strange, isn't it, seeing yourself in someone else's eyes? Remembering what it felt like to be that broken, that hopeless. You were never hopeless. Just lost. There's a difference. There's all the difference in the world. Marcus turned to face her. Hopeless means there's nothing left. Lost means you just haven't found your way yet. You were always going to find your way, Victoria. I just helped point you in the right direction. Victoria was quiet for a moment, watching the patients below. A woman in her 60s was taking her first steps with a walker, her face a mixture of terror and determination. A teenage boy was learning to balance on parallel bars, his mother crying quietly in the corner. A middle-aged man was doing leg lifts on a therapy table, his jaw clenched with effort. How many people have we helped now? Victoria asked. 217 patients since we opened, 43 walking independently, 89 walking with assistance, the rest still in treatment. And how many couldn't afford it without the foundation? All of them. Marcus smiled. That was kind of the point. Victoria felt tears prickling at her eyes. 217 people who'd been given a second chance. 217 families who'd been given hope. All because a mechanic had refused to let her drive away in a car with broken brake lines. I keep thinking about that day, Victoria said. The day I rolled into your garage. I was so horrible to you, Marcus. I threw a key at your chest. I called you a scammer. I treated you like you were nothing. I remember. Why didn't you just let me leave? Why didn't you just fix the belt and send me on my way? Nobody would have blamed you. I certainly gave you every reason to. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring down at the therapy floor below. My wife asked me the same question once, he finally said. After Lily's accident, after everything fell apart, she asked me why I kept fighting when giving up would have been so much easier. What did you tell her? I told her that I couldn't save her, that no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't fix what was broken inside her body. Marcus's voice grew thick with emotion. But I could save other people. I could fix things for strangers that I couldn't fix for the woman I loved. And maybe if I saved enough people, if I fixed enough broken things, it would mean something. It would mean her life mattered. Victoria reached out and took Marcus's hand. Her life mattered, Victoria said quietly. Because of her, you became the man who saved me. And because you saved me, we built this place. And because of this place, 217 people have second chances. That's Sarah's legacy, Marcus. That's what her life meant. Marcus wiped his eyes with his free hand. She would have liked you, he said. Once you stopped being terrible, I mean. Victoria laughed through her tears. I hope so. I hope I would have liked her too. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the patients below continue their work, fighting their battles, finding their way back. There's something I need to tell you, Marcus said finally. What? I got an offer last week, a job offer. Big automotive company wants to bring me on as a consultant. 6 figures, full benefits, the whole package. Victoria felt her heart clench. That's amazing, Marcus. Congratulations. I turned it down. What? Why? Marcus turned to face her, his expression serious. Because my work here isn't finished. Because every day someone like Daniel walks through those doors and they need someone to believe in them. And because... He stopped seeming to struggle with the words. Because what? Because there's nowhere else I'd rather be, Marcus said simply. This place, these people, this work, it's what I was meant to do. It's what Sarah would have wanted me to do. And it's what I want to do. Victoria felt warmth spreading through her chest. "I'm glad," she said. "Really glad. There's one more thing." "What?" Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. "This isn't what you think," Marcus said quickly, seeing her expression. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" Marcus opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with the words, "Nobody is beyond repair." "It was Sarah's idea," Marcus explained. "Before she died, she told me that someday I'd meet someone who needed to hear those words, someone who'd lost hope, someone who'd forgotten who they were." He held the ring out to Victoria. "She said when I met that person, I should give them this ring, to remind them that broken things can be fixed, that lost people can be found." Victoria stared at the ring, tears streaming down her face. "I can't accept this." "You already did," Marcus said. 3 years ago, when you decided to fight, you accepted everything Sarah wanted to give you. This is just the physical reminder." Victoria took the ring with shaking hands. She slid it onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her, as if it had been waiting for her all along. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thanks, Sarah. She's the one who never gave up on people. I just learned from her." That evening, Victoria drove to Claire's apartment. Her daughter had graduated from college 6 months ago and was now working as a physical therapist at the Cole Chen Center. She'd chosen the profession after watching her mother's recovery, after seeing what was possible when someone refused to give up. "Mom!" Claire hugged her at the door. "I wasn't expecting you tonight." "I know. I just wanted to see you." They sat together on Claire's small balcony watching the sun set over Baltimore. Victoria told her about Daniel, about the conversation with Marcus, about the ring now resting on her finger. "That's beautiful," Claire said, examining the engraving. "Nobody is beyond repair. I remember when you first told me about Marcus saying that. I didn't believe it then." "Neither did I." "But now..." Victoria looked at her daughter, this brilliant, compassionate young woman, who'd somehow forgiven her mother for 2 years of cruelty and neglect, who'd held her hand through the hardest year of her life, who'd believed in her even when she hadn't believed in herself. "Now I know it's true," Victoria said. "Not just because I walked again, but because of everything that came after. The foundation, the patience, you." Claire reached out and took her mother's hand. "Mom, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "When you were in the wheelchair during those 2 years when you pushed everyone away, I used to have this dream, the same dream over and over." Claire's voice trembled slightly. "I dreamed that you stood up and walked to me, that you wrapped your arms around me and told me everything was going to be okay. And then I'd wake up, and you'd be in that chair, and I'd know it was never going to happen." Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. "But then it did happen," Claire continued. "That day at the rehabilitation center when you walked across the room to me, Mom, that was the moment I knew. I knew that dreams could come true, that broken things could be fixed, that my mother had come back to me." Victoria pulled her daughter into a hug, holding her tight, letting 3 years of healing wash over both of them. "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered, "for the years I lost, for the pain I caused, for everything." "You came back," Claire replied. "That's all that matters. You came back." They held each other as the sun disappeared below the horizon, mother and daughter together again. Later that night, Victoria drove to the Cole Chen Center one last time. The building was closed, the lights dimmed, the therapy rooms empty. But Victoria had a key, and she let herself in, walking through the quiet hallways with only the echo of her footsteps for company. She made her way to the East Wing, to the room where Daniel had sat in his wheelchair earlier that day. She thought about his face, the anger, the bitterness, the hopelessness that she knew so well. She thought about the spark of interest that had flickered in his eyes when she'd crouched down to meet him at his level. She thought about all the Daniels who would come through these doors in the years ahead. All the broken people looking for someone to believe in them. All the lost souls searching for someone to show them the way home. Victoria walked to the window and looked out at the Baltimore skyline, the same skyline she'd stared at from her apartment window 3 years ago when she'd been a different person, living a different life. When hope had seemed like poison and anger had been her only companion. She thought about Marcus Cole standing in his struggling garage, grease on his hands, refusing to let her drive away in a death trap. She thought about his promise, that impossible, ridiculous promise that had changed everything. "I'll make you walk again." He'd kept that promise, not by fixing her legs, only she could do that, but by believing in her, by seeing something in her that she couldn't see in herself, by refusing to give up even when she'd given him every reason to. Victoria heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Marcus standing in the doorway. "Thought I might find you here," he said. "You always come back to this room." "It's where it started. For me anyway. This is where I decided to try." Marcus walked over to stand beside her at the window. "Regrets?" he asked. Victoria thought about the question carefully before answering. "Only that I didn't start sooner. Only that I wasted 2 years being angry when I could have been healing." She paused. "But maybe I needed those 2 years. Maybe I had to hit rock bottom before I could start climbing back up." "That's how it usually works," Marcus agreed. "People don't change until they're ready, and they're not ready until they've suffered enough to want something different." "Is that what happened to you after Sarah died?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I suffered," he said finally, "for a long time. I pushed people away, shut down, became someone I didn't recognize. But then, one day, I was working on a car, and I realized something. I realized that fixing things was the only thing that made sense. That every engine I repaired, every brake line, I replaced, every broken machine I put back together, it was all a way of fighting back. Against death, against loss, against the randomness of a universe that takes people without warning or reason. And that's why you helped me. That's why I help everyone." Marcus turned to face her. "Victoria, when you rolled into my shop 3 years ago, I didn't see a cruel woman in a wheelchair. I saw someone who was broken, someone who was lost, someone who needed to be fixed. And fixing people, that's what I do. It's the only thing I know how to do." Victoria reached out and took his hand. "You do it well," she said. "Better than anyone I've ever known." They stood together in silence, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their separate catastrophes and built something beautiful from the pieces. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we keep going," Victoria replied. "We keep helping people, keep building the foundation, keep proving that nobody is beyond repair. And us." Victoria looked at Marcus, this kind, gentle man who'd saved her life in more ways than she could count, who'd shown her that dignity wasn't something you could sell no matter how desperate you got, who'd taught her that love wasn't about what people deserved, it was about what they needed. "We keep being whatever we are," she said. "Partners, friends, family. That's enough for you." Victoria smiled. "That's everything to me." Marcus squeezed her hand, and Victoria felt something settle in her chest. Not romance, not exactly, but something deeper. Something more lasting. The kind of connection that came from walking through fire together and emerging on the other side. They left the rehabilitation center together, stepping out into the cool night air. The Baltimore skyline glittered in the darkness, beautiful and full of possibility. "Same time tomorrow?" Marcus asked. "Same time every day," Victoria replied, "until there's no one left to help." "That day will never come." "I know," Victoria smiled. "And I'm glad." She walked to her car, walked on her own 2 feet, without a cane, without assistance, without anything holding her back. 3 years ago, that walk would have been impossible. Now, it was just another step in a journey that would continue for the rest of her life. Victoria Sterling had rolled into a struggling auto repair shop, expecting nothing but contempt from the world. She'd found something infinitely more valuable, She'd found hope. She'd found healing. She'd found her way home. And as she drove through the streets of Baltimore, heading toward a future she never could have imagined, Victoria thought about the words engraved on the ring Marcus had given her. The words that had started as a promise and become a mission. The words that would guide every choice she made for the rest of her life. Nobody is beyond repair. Not the angry woman in the wheelchair who'd lost everything. Not the grieving mechanic who'd lost his wife. Not the hopeless young man who'd just started his journey. Not any of the hundreds, thousands, millions of broken people scattered across the world waiting for someone to believe in them. Nobody was beyond repair. And Victoria Sterling would spend the rest of her life proving it.